So thank you everyone for coming to the orientation to learn more about our 2 study trips for this year. So I'm going to start talking about Costa Rica, and then Professors Breskin and Ferguson are going to talk about the Geneva trip. So the dates for the trip to Costa Rica are May 23rd to June 4th. So it's basically a 2-week trip. Everyone will get their own flights, arrive into San Jose, and then the next day we start our daily itinerary and field visits. So this is actually the 3rd year that we're doing this. I'll be the instructor that's leading the group to Costa Rica. Really excited. We always have a really great time, really close-knit group of students, both online students and on-campus students usually attend. And our focus is very much on environmental health, climate change, and sustainability. So the interactions and interrelationships between those topics. And one thing I wanted to draw your attention to is we do have a website with a lot more photos and information, including the syllabus and daily itinerary. So please take a look at that. But Costa Rica is really a great place to learn about sustainability. It's known as sort of a model around the world. It's a small and very safe country and quite diverse. So we are actually going to be located in 3 different, very diverse parts of the country. So we start off in the capital, and there we learn about the history of coffee and the health systems. We visit the National Children's Hospital, the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, the women's prison, that kind of thing. And then a few days later, we move down to the border with Panama, where the indigenous and many migrant workers live. And there we learn more about culture and livelihood, sustainability, and indigenous rights and how those all intersect in Costa Rica. And then we end at the beach in the Osa Peninsula, which is named by National Geographic as one of the most biodiverse places on Earth. So it's a really great place to learn about how monoculture affects health, how changing ecosystems and rising ocean temperature affect health, for example, and the importance of mangroves. And we take a kayak tour, and we really have a great time. So we partner with a Costa Rican-based organization called the Inter-American Center for Global Health, and they work with us. They escort us and do a lot of the organization in terms of making contacts with our field visits and lectures and things. We have 6 modules that we review throughout the course, including human rights and culture, migration, changing ecosystems, infectious diseases. So we learn kind of every 2 days we have a different module. Let's see, what else about Costa Rica? You can drink the water from the tap. That's interesting to know. So the health systems are really pretty good there. And it's small, so we get around in our own private bus. At the end of the trip, we fly home, and that's back to San Jose, and that's included in the cost. Let's see, what else did I want to say about it? So the cost is around $1,500 per person. That includes your, and that it depends on how many students, but that includes almost all of the meals, the lodging, we're in hotels, the bus, the tours and excursions, site visits, and the flight that I mentioned back to San Jose. So that cost does not include your flight to and from Costa Rica, and it does not include tuition. Let's see. So as far as like assignments and stuff, we really focus a lot on what you're going to do when you're there, a reflective journal, readings, that kind of thing. So you could take a look at the the syllabus for more information on that. The registration deadline is the 1st of March, so we have a little bit less than a month for those who are interested. You can apply to both programs. The Geneva trip deadline is a little bit earlier, so just keep that in mind. And I think that's all I wanted to say in terms of the introduction to the trip, and we'll take questions after the presentations. Thank you.
Yeah. Although you just missed Costa Rica, but you can find out about Geneva. So we're now going to give kind of a joint overview of the Geneva trip, which takes place, it's slightly early, the dates are May 17th through 29th, so it's essentially straight after graduation, for those who are graduating, I guess. And I'm going to come back to some more logistics around that in a minute. But just to give an overview of the trip itself, this is really about taking all of the classes that you've done around global health policy and governance and all of those kind of diplomacy, all those issues, and taking it into the real world of that. Geneva being kind of the epicenter for a lot of those activities. And there's the 2 weeks look kind of different when we're in Geneva. The first week we're at the World Health Assembly, which you may know is an annual meeting convened by the World Health Organization, and there are people from all around the world there. So all of the governments of the world attend pretty much, Ministry of Health officials, as well as lots of UN agency staff and lots of civil society organizations. And the goal is to really set the agenda for global health for the year ahead. So there's a full agenda of what are the hot topics right now, what's the stuff that needs global attention, and how do we get governments to come together to agree on what are we going to do for the next year. So it's this totally fascinating space of like politics meets technical public health and sort of boils down into some sort of action plan. And there's an official agenda where there are all the countries coming together and discussing all these issues. There are side meetings, which are more informal events run by either countries or civil society on like given topics. There's closed door meetings, which we don't get into, but we try and listen at the door sometimes. And then there's like all the corridor conversations, which is totally fascinating, just sitting in the cafeteria and seeing like how people negotiate around all that stuff. So it's this like enormously hectic space where somehow things ultimately come together and coalesce into a policy agenda for the year ahead. The way that we get in is we join civil society delegations. So we work with the NCD Alliance, which is an alliance of dozens of NGOs working primarily on non-communicable diseases. And we go in with them to help take notes on the sessions that are relevant to them. So we definitely have a function. And it's just a very busy time, right? Between the note-taking, the attending the sessions that you want to attend, we try and help facilitate meetings with some of the cool and interesting people who are there, so that you can meet professionals working in your area of interest or in your country of interest. There's events in the evening, there's events in the morning, like it really is just like totally full on. The reason to do that is, the reason to say that is not just to prepare you mentally, it's just going to be hectic, but also because what it means is because the assembly is early this year, it really starts like straight after graduation. We have a little bit of prep work that we do beforehand to make sure that everybody's up to speed on the issues and ready to hit the ground running. So that means that on May 14th, we're going to have like a full day where we all get together and work together on here in LA on the issues of how do we make sure that we're all going to be coalesced as a group and hit the assembly the following Monday, knowing what's going on. We'll also do a couple of 1 to 2 hour meetings earlier on, so probably through April and May. Again, just to look at like what's the agenda for the assembly this year, what does it mean, what should you wear, all of that kind of like logistical stuff. Before I hand over to Professor Gruskin to talk about the second week, I just want to say a couple of logistical things. So I wrote some things down that Dr. Withers said. Switzerland is a small and safe country, and you can drink the tap water. Just seems important to know.
If you're going to say it, we're going to say it.
Can't promise beach, but there's really good chocolate. You need a fancy watch. Okay. Other things to say, Geneva's totally a manageable city. We do rely on public transportation, but it's easy to get around. We'll orient you, we'll make sure that everybody's okay with that. Everybody's responsible for their own plane tickets and also sorting out their own accommodation. Most people get groups together and do Airbnbs or similar. And I think that's probably the easiest way to do stuff. How you do your lodging as well as your flights is obviously going to have an impact on the cost of the trip. But overall, we do estimate around $2,000 for the trip plus the tuition.
That includes airfare.
That includes airfare and our estimate for accommodation, assuming that you're going to share with some friends while you're there. The other thing to say, so I said the dates are the 17th through the 29th of May. There is a long weekend in the middle there, because the 25th or whatever it is a holiday in Geneva. So it means that you'll have that Saturday, Sunday, Monday, which is kind of a nice chunk of time if you want to explore some Switzerland or head over to France or Italy or wherever else is nearby. I think that's all I wanted to do. Do you want to do? Oh, sorry, just two other practical things. So the registration deadline for this was the 28th of February, and we take a maximum of 12 students on the trip. So now I'll pass you over to week 2.
Here we go. Before I go into it, I wanted to say something about this particular moment, because it's a really complicated political moment right now, particularly those of us from the US. And the role that the Trump administration is playing is really problematic. And in global governance spaces and in global health spaces. And so one of the things that I think is important to be aware of is that Professor Ferguson and I are both part of a number of kind of global coalitions that are trying to work on some of these issues and trying to address what's happening. And so by virtue of that, part of what's going to be very busy in particular, just to say, is that the Trump administration has announced that they are going to hold a meeting the day before the World Health Assembly, where they're trying to bring together what they're calling their like-minded governments, who are basically trying to roll back any advances in sexual and reproductive health rights, trying to push for the World Health Assembly to be used in a political way about the rights of the unborn. They're trying to kind of manipulate the space in some ways. And so what that means is that there are some other meetings that will be taking place as well to try to address that and to try to make sure that things do not roll back. And so I do want to make it clear that this is a political space. And those of us that are not necessarily in line with the Trump administration, just to put it out there, in terms of kind of what's happening, that we all do hold U.S. passports. To some, and so the implication of that, and you don't.
You do.
So, I mean, I think that the issue is in terms of the ways in which those things play out, to just realize that that's going to be part of the conversation. Not to say don't be part of it, just recognize that that's a part of what's happening there in a kind of a different way than probably any other space that you normally work in or engage in. Right.
And just to say that that's something that we're obviously really attuned to because we deal with it a lot. And so it will be a constant topic of conversation for us throughout the time there, just in terms of everybody trying to navigate that and what it feels like.
Right. So just to know that, right? So then what happens is that the assembly this year ends on Thursday. So it's a shorter assembly than it normally is, right? So it's Monday through Thursday. On Friday, we plan to have a joint meeting, right? Where Ms. Ferguson and myself, where we would be able to then work with students to be able, at that point, to be able to best plan for the following week. And the idea is not just to summarize kind of what we've been through the last 4 days, but actually to be able to think, okay, what does this mean in terms of the organizations that we're going to be meeting with now? And so we have very strong relationships with a lot of the UN agencies. We work with them a lot. And so we are not doing tourism. I want to be very clear about that. What we're doing is we're going inside the organizations to talk to people who are the people we work with, to actually talk about, well, what happened at the assembly? What does this actually mean for this organization, thinking about what this means in a practical way for this coming year, and what are some of the issues that are going to be addressed, as well as what does this organization do, and how does this connect to the kinds of health issues and topics that you're interested in. And so in that second week, right, we'll have a full day of the World Health Organization. And in that day, we'll be working with, we'll have an agenda where we'll be meeting kind of every hour and a half with a different department of WHO, from climate change to sexual and reproductive health and rights to non-communicable disease to tobacco to kind of as we learn the students' interests, we can make choices about who will meet with us because we began working closely with WHO, so they're willing to do this for us. We're also going to spend a full day at the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. And the reason we're going to do that is because last year we only had half a day, and the students requested in their evaluations that there be a full day because it was such a rich area to understand really what is community level work look like on the ground across the different regions of the world, and how is it that to understand kind of how an organization that works in all these different regions does this sort of work. And again, coming back to what comes out of the assembly and how is this going to connect. We also will be at the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, which is the UN agency responsible for human rights, to be able to talk to them about what comes out of there and how to think about what they're doing. We'll also be, to be on the totally other side, at the World Trade Organization, right? So WTO, which is perhaps the organization that in many ways has a very different role in public health. They deal with pharmaceutical companies, they deal with a whole range of companies with factors. We'll also go to the WTO to get a sense from them of kind of how they operate. And again, it's very interesting always amongst ourselves to have conversations having been to the human rights organization and to be with WTO in the same day, and then to talk about kind of what does that look like in terms of kind of talking about the same sorts of health topics. The only other thing that, so we have basically 4 full days of meetings, and we basically have 2 a day. Right, and the idea is that at the end of that you then feel substantively grounded from having been through the political process, having then been through organizations that are concretely dealing with these issues in terms of the work that they do, and then this is why. So this now what says me about the assignment, like kind of the piece. So in addition to supporting these organizations, and in addition to kind of engaging with what you see at the assembly, we recognize that everybody has a different sort of health topic that they're really interested in, right? So the idea is that before we even leave for Geneva, that we have clarity from you about what's the topic that you're really focused on. And for that topic, before you leave, we expect you to have done a literature review and have kind of understood kind of what is the state of the art, right? That then when you're at the assembly, one of the things that you will work out with your teammates, is what I'm going to say, is if there are meetings happening about your topic, even if it's not what you're doing for the NCD Alliance, that you have the time to go to those, so that you're actually in the meetings that are happening on the thing that you're really passionate about, right? So that you have a chance to do that. That then you'll take that, and then when we are at the organizations the next week, again, you'll be able to ask questions of these organizations in relationship to your health topic specifically. So you'll therefore have the literature, the political, and the technical in terms of the topic that you care about, so that at the end of it, the idea is that you'll be able to have kind of a summary paper that you can pull all of these things together in terms of being able to think about things in ways that hopefully will help you professionally later, because you'll really have had kind of a solid sense of where things are. And then the only other thing I would say is that we are both very focused on trying to maximize the experience for you. And so what that means is that if you have a health topic, yes, it's on the agenda, yes, there's the organizations, but there's also individual interviews. We'll help set up for you individual interviews with whether it's diplomats, whether it's civil society, whether it's UN agency people, people who are working on those issues so that you can have some one-on-one time with those folks in terms of how you're thinking. Did I lose anything?
Oh, it all sounds really fun to me.
Me too. I want to go. Okay, but I also want to go on the Costa Rica trip. That sounded really fun to me too. Okay. Hey, Will, did we leave out anything? Because he's been on both trips.
Not off the top of my head. I think one thing to note, the question has been posed of if online students can go. So just making it clear
Absolutely.
that online students can go.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we hope is for a diversity of students, not only in terms of on campus and online, but also from other schools within USC, right? So that we're bringing together in terms of kind of who the group is, people from Price, people from social work, people from other schools as well.
Also, we are usually asked, is it feasible for someone, an online student who's taking another class at the time, to go on these trips? And I think it is.
Yeah, I took biostatistics and another class while I was in Costa Rica. It was tough, but it was doable.
Yeah, so we do have one free day during the trip at the beach where people could go up and do the beach stuff, or you could work on homework.
Go do your biostats.
Yeah.
That's what I did.
And then we're also asked usually about practicums. So there are opportunities for those who want to do their practicum at the end of the trip in Costa Rica. We can work with our partners to set you up with the practicum there. In your case?
It's not so easy to do in our case. However, it's easier to do the following year. So just to say, if you've been on the trip, we're then able to facilitate potentially practicum or internship opportunities the next year. But because of the way that the processes work within UN agencies, they're not able to take people without having gone through a large global selection process, even for interns. So it can't be set up until after you've been through being there.
I have a quick question. If being accepted into, let's say, the Costa Rica, do we have to file for any special visas?
No, if you're a U.S. citizen, no visas are required. For most countries, no visas are required, but we do ask on the registration if you have a passport from another country, we check on the visa.
And with Switzerland, there are more visa requirements for more countries. But again, it's doable as long as, I don't know, in terms of people online, people in this room, I don't know what your passport, what passport you hold, but to say, as long as you start early, it's never been a problem. Where it's a problem is when people don't start dealing with it until it's late. That's where it becomes a problem.
Other questions?
Anyone online have a question? The question is there an online application process for the trips, and where can they find the application?
And the answer is
the trips are on our website, globalhealth.usc.edu, and the applications will be on there. The deadline for Geneva is February 28th, and then for Costa Rica, March 1st. Okay. But I can provide the links in a follow-up email with the applications for everyone who's here.
other questions.
There was another one about accommodations in Geneva and how that works.
When Professor Bergson was talking about the fact that students tend to meet up and then decide, what's happened in previous years is that students who are in these conversations end up communicating with one another, and then you end up getting an Airbnb or VRBO that's basically 3, 4, 5 people within a space tends to be the way to do it. There are other accommodations that you can get on your own, but they tend to be more expensive. And I think over time we realized that the cheapest option is really for people to try to meet to do in groups of 2, 3, or 4.
And one thing that we will do in some of the initial meetings is talk a little bit more about this and like up and down in terms of easy access to the assembly and to some of the organizations, just to make sure that people end up in places that are convenient.
Right. You're right. I mean, one other thing in relationship to that, which is that you're right across the border from France, And the World Health Organization in particular is right there at the border. And so it's cheaper to be in France than it is to be in Switzerland, but there's a visa issue if you're not an American citizen. It's much harder. So it's just a real question in terms, unless you have an EU passport, it's just harder in terms of being able to think about it.
Well, and also because some of the assembly sessions, like the evening stuff runs late, and then there's way fewer buses later in the evening. So if you are in France, it can be a real pain to get right there.
Unless you want to take Uber, there's not Lyft, but then that's more money, so then maybe it wasn't worth it, and you might as well stay in Geneva. So, yeah.
Any other questions? Do we need to be physically present in Los Angeles for the pre-trip meetings, or can you attend via Zoom?
You do not need to be physically present, but it would be highly desirable, because one of the things that you're still buzzing. That's okay. Okay. All right. So that, but I don't know physically how far away you are. But the reason that it would be highly desirable is twofold. It's not only in terms of the information, but what's going to be really important, and I can say it kind of in a sort of random way, but I can't emphasize enough how important this is going to be. We have to operate as a unit when we're in Geneva at the beginning. Not so much for the second week, but for the first week, because we have to rely on each other, because we start sometimes at 6 in the morning, we end sometimes at midnight, and we have to know that everybody is doing what they said, and everybody has to know one another. So why it's desirable is because that day is an opportunity for us all to get to know each other as humans and to actually have some time together, so that there's an ability to kind of work together. Because we really, I mean, Professor Ferguson said it, but I'm going to say it too. We have to hit the ground running, not like sprinting. Like sprinting. Okay, so it's one of those things. So how do you do that when you get off the plane? You need to know that you're kind of together in some way.
Yeah, and that said, I do want to recognize, depending on where you are, particularly for online students, like we're not going to say you can't come if you can't attend it, but we are going to say, please, if you possibly can, it will be really helpful.
Right.
In terms of Costa Rica, we hold 3 pre-trip meetings, and they're all via Zoom. That's not an issue.
And all of our other meetings, it's not an issue. The only question is that one. And even with that one, it's totally doable. We just have to figure it out collectively. How do we do that? Any other questions? There are people sitting here. Anybody have any questions?
I don't think so. Oh. For Geneva trip, we fly in directly to the city or have a meetup point?
Everybody's responsible for flying into the city on their own. And most people will get in, I imagine, on the Sunday, even as the assembly starts on the Monday. So we will let people arrive on Sunday and get to wherever they're staying and please sleep. And then we will all meet up early on Monday morning to go into the assembly together. So that's the first time that we're going to meet. Again, like beforehand, we'll give you super detailed instructions of where we're going to meet and how to get there and which bus and where you get off and all of that stuff. But we won't all physically get together as a group until the Monday morning, because everybody's going to fly in at different times.
And there was a couple of people last year who flew into Paris and then took a train into Geneva. So you don't have to fly directly into Geneva. You can find an alternate route.
Yeah, and we really encourage you to find cheap flights, right? There really are. We do for ourselves. There really are cheap flights, and it could well be that it makes more sense to go by train. It could be that it's just as cheap to end up having a stop in Paris and then flying from Paris to Geneva or something like that. So you can figure it out in terms of your timing. We will certainly be there the weekend before, and one of the questions that we have is in terms of how many people will arrive earlier. So we could conceivably, if everybody was there, meet up on the Sunday night. It's just that we don't know when people are going to be arriving, so that people have a chance to connect. It's an easy city to get around. It is the thing that I think I want to say. And so I think that both trips, I think the Costa Rica trip is incredibly important in terms of really understanding planetary health, in terms of being able to understand sustainability, in terms of being able to understand environmental health, in order to be able to understand the connections to rights, in terms of all of those different things. It's very much, I think, really one of the special opportunities that we offer at USC. And then the Geneva course is, again, one of the very special opportunities. It's almost the flip side, right? So it's a question about being able to look at the two together as really kind of something that is kind of special. So we really do hope that students can partake in one or both.
After the return of the trips, do the courses resume online for the students?
So not for Geneva. So once we finish the time together in Geneva, each student will work on their final paper, but that will be the only kind of outstanding thing after that. So obviously students can be in touch with us via email and stuff, but there's no more group activity after that second week in Geneva.
And the other thing I would add is that students have often found that they're kind of writing the paper as they're going. So they've done the background and lit review before they're there. The end of the first week, they'll have written up kind of what happened in the political space. The end of the second week, they've written up what the organizations have done in the interviews, so that at the end, there's not that much more to do to actually pull the paper together.
And it's similar for Costa Rica. You're writing every day as you go along, and then that's what you turn in. You have like a week after the trip returns to turn that in, and that's it.
Anybody else?
Anticipation of the timetable. What's coming?
I'm not sure if I understand your question. For the internship at Geneva, is there a separate application process for networking events?
So let's take
I
networking.
think they're different things, but yeah, go ahead.
Exactly. So let's take networking events first. So in terms of networking events, we really take responsibility for facilitating that for you. And so one of the things that you'll get as it starts to be produced online is the program that is put out not just by the assembly, but by kind of the relevant organizations around. And we will then work collectively to be able to look at the schedule to make sure that the NCD Alliance's work is being taken care of, but at the same time you can go to whatever events that you want. We will support you in terms of trying to do that, so there isn't a registration for that per se. There is, however, in terms of the internships, that is something that we can discuss when we're in Geneva in terms of what it would mean for the following year.
But just to be clear, like even if you wanted to do an internship for this summer, it's already too late to be getting into that process with any of the UN agencies because it started months ago. So that's why we're saying for this year it wouldn't work out. But if it's something that's of interest for a future year, then we can talk about it.
And it might even be more interesting to you because you'll have been there, so you'll have seen the difference between the kinds of organizations and how they work, so you'll know which ones are more or less interesting to you.
Anybody else? I think that's it.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
for coming. And being cold with us in the room.
The Costa Rica website, I don't know, we'll type in, but it's costarica.usc.edu for information.
And if you have further questions, you can email us. I put the email in the chat, global.health@usc.edu, and we can answer all your questions. Thanks, everybody.